do not necessarily represent those of Access Fort Wayne, the Allen County Public Library, or any other supporting group. Access Fort Wayne is a department of the Allen County Public Library. If you or anyone you know might be interested in making a television show, please call 260-421-1250.
Hi, Dr. Rudy Kachmann. Welcome to the Mind, Body, Spirit Show. Today's subject will be very interesting and extremely important for your family, yourself, the children. And the name of it, addicting our children to sugar. And I Googled Fort Wayne school system and I looked at their menu. For breakfast menu for April of 2024. You can print it off on your computer, and that's appreciated. But what I saw was frightening. If I wanted to addict a child to sugar, that's what I would feed them. Let me give you, I'm not going to read the whole thing to you, you can Google it, but for example, cereals, Pop-Tarts, chilled fruit, which has a lot of fructose, 100% juice, I recommend eating the fruit itself and not feeding it the juice. You give it the juice, that's high sugar. And milk. Milk is not very healthy for children because it's full of hormones. When a calf is born, for example, they inject it with a hormone, a growth hormone, yes. And then they put the cow in a cage and put pesticides and herbicides over it. And then they milk it. That increases milk production about 10 times. And then you give the milk to your child. That's not healthy. And the milk industry is paying off your politicians big time to be sure that milk is on every menu. I'm going to go and review the history of health for children. This is a very good book I hold up here if you happen to want to read more. The Labor of Lunch. And that goes through the history. And you'll know a lot more when I'm done speaking, but I can also invite you to read more and to look at YouTube, for example. So it is my opinion that what we're feeding our children is the road to addiction. But who wants your child to be addicted to sugar? And not being judgmental, but if you look around, we see evidence of that. People are gaining a lot of weight. 80% of the people you're looking at who gain a lot of weight have type 2 diabetes, and they're going to get the 30 to 50 diseases related to diabetes. Dementia, heart disease, lung disease, cataracts, blindness, amputations, dislocations, liver disease, kidney disease, incidence rates of cancer, all caused by eating the wrong food. And a lot of us are grabbing this food because we're addicts to sugar. Even myself, at 135 pounds, 88 years old, 3 weeks ago, no pills, no illnesses. So I'm an example of what I am teaching you. And also we parents have to pay attention to what we feed our kids before they even go to school, what we're eating when they're still in the uterus, because we can change their genetic code and start the addictive process too. So it's not just the schools, but the schools is what we're paying for. And that's the subject. So the greatest trust a parent can give is the schools, letting someone else care for them and nurture them. At least 50% of what they eat, they get there. For some, it's 100%, so we put a lot of trust in them. We need to fix the food and also the jobs, because what has occurred that we have subsidized school systems less, and they can't afford to pay full-time employees, for example. So I'm reviewing really the culture of that. We need a school culture. It needs to be part of the school system. The way it is today, we're treating the school lunch like it's not part of the school. That's occurring today. The National School Lunch Program, which was established in 1946, a long time ago, that's well described in this book, the National School Lunch Program. And the goal was to uplift the health of the nation's children, because when they examined the children to put them in the Army, when they were drafting them, they noticed a lot of them were in very poor health. They were not eating the correct food or the amount of food. And the act was passed so that we could bring food from the farms, subsidize the farms, to give to the schools. So it was, in essence, to help them too. For 70 years, the National School Lunch Program, NSLP, has not escaped the trap of cheapness. They try to provide as cheap a food as possible, which many times is not healthy or nutritious food. So it's not just food for you, it's got to be healthy food, okay? So it's not just low cost, and what they were following really was a political and economic philosophy. Politics get involved. The cheap factory foods, industrialized foods, were delivered to the school system and were feeding it to the children, leading to the addictive path. So they're making us and the children sick and creating sugar addicts. That's occurring today. And just look around, and you can see nature arranges for us to seek some food. Even myself, if you replace a donut there and it looks real good, I might grab it because I've eaten in a while. So, but what the schools are doing is increasing this to a point where the majority of people who don't are healthy, but I'd like to remind you too that 80% of the people overweight probably have diabetes and are eligible for these diseases, but 30% of the trophies, thin on the outside, but fat inside, fat in their liver, and the pancreas stops the pancreas from working, and they're diabetic too. Yes. So if you're thin, say, I'm not diabetic, well, I will not believe you unless you had a serum insulin test. Serum insulin is elevated for 10 to 15 years before the blood sugar ever gets up. We're not testing children properly. And I put that at the feet of the pediatricians who know better. I'm in the medical schools who should know better. I'd offered to teach there, but they turned me down because they only do what National tells them to do, and National has been influenced by bribery from the big food industry. So the sick child and adults, they become sick adults, are creating a multi-billion-dollar industry and harming and killing millions of people. What we feed our kids before they go to school and after they go to school, and what we're eating as adults is reducing the lifespan of people 20, 30 years. They're dying in the 60s and 70s instead of living to be 100, which is my plan. I'm well on the way, 88, no pills, no disease, okay? So, and to top it all off, what I'm speaking about affects some cultures and races more, because some cultures and races have less good food available to them, and they may have some little bit of a genetic change through slavery, for example. Incorrect testing makes it even worse by not getting serum insulin. We don't really know people on the path to a diagnosis of diabetes, while on the path, changes are occurring in their vascular system when they have no symptoms. They discovered that in the Korean Vietnamese War, of the soldiers that had died from the war, the Americans already had tremendous changes in their vascular system. Although looking on the outside, they look fine. While the Vietnamese and Koreans who ate more, a better diet, for one thing, they didn't eat as much, they didn't have the food, they had no changes. So there was scientific proof. 30 to 35 million children are also on low income, and so they more likely to use the school system. And that's nice that we feed them, but the question is, what are we feeding them? Are we feeding them addictive food, so they're more likely to die early and develop disease early? That's exactly what we are doing. So there is a racial involvement here. The National School Lunch Program, $13.6 billion budget, does not stretch very far. Children are sorted into, you get it for free, some at a reduced price, and some they pay for the whole thing. But again, the quality of the food counts. So the labor of cooking has been farmed out to factories. It comes in little packages. Then they're cooking at the school site. The kitchen people are not speaking to the students, which is important. So there are radical roots involved here. My dream, what's my dream? What would be a better way? Free lunches for all. Some cities, that's actually happening. But the type of food is critical. It could be free if you're giving them addictive food. That may help a little because they're eating, but they won't be healthy, okay? So this is my dream, that we have gardens in the school where we teach the kids how to grow natural food, so they might do that at home, that we would give cooking classes to children. We actually did that many years ago, and that was stopped. Why? To save money. Kids need that. They need to learn how to brush their teeth, because a lot of diseases are related to the teeth. So, and to have canning and food presentation workshops, so they would learn. That they learn the biology and nutrition classes, what are important nutrients. For example, if they eat only vegetables, they are not getting B12, which you get mainly from animals. They need to learn the science of that. And the other thing is they need to bring the parents in, because they feed them half the time at home and also before they ever go to school. And so children need to participate in the labor of lunch. That lunch is part of the school system, and breakfast are not separate from the school system. So that they develop a relationship with well-trained and well-paid employees, that they know about what good nutrition is, and that they themselves are happy, not just part-time workers, that they're well-educated, well-informed people. And certainly there are some cities and mayors where this is occurring, and I applaud Chicago, and as of late, but before that time, even Eric Adams, who is the mayor of New York City. This is a great book to read, because the mayor, when he was in charge of Brooklyn, he was overweight, going blind, and he went to the Cleveland Clinic, and they educated him to eat better. And he then published this book. And in New York City right now, you can go online and see it. The millions, 1.1 million students in New York City are getting free breakfast, free lunch, and snacks. And they also feed them when they're not going them to school. Can you imagine? But again, and if you look at their website, most of the food they are providing is indeed healthy. But again, that's the important thing, and I looked at that, and I think they're getting food. It is much healthier than you see in most schools, certainly better than you see here in Fort Wayne. There's less addictive food, but the last chapter in that, hasn't been written. But we have to give him credit. The same thing is occurring now in Chicago. And the culture is changing. So we need to take the breakfast and lunch, the food system, and include it in the educational system, and not to make it separate. How healthy you are is extremely important. In the schools, you need to teach people, and you need to teach them the correct thing. So all children get tested. I think this will be a good thing. To once a year, that includes their height and their weight, to see if there's any problems. And then if it's way off, that they meet with an expert from the kitchen, educated nutritional person, that teaches them differently if they're not healthy. And serum insulin, BMI, blood sugar, and then meet with an educated nurse practitioner, DO or MD, that's informed, that can review that. And the cafeteria should be the heart of our schools. That determines how long we live, how healthy we are. In the end, will determine the kind of job we were able to tolerate. So that would elevate, we would elevate the school breakfast and the school lunches. Of the National School Lunch Program, but they're not doing that. And also it would be racial justice, okay? The world would improve. We'd have a healthy-looking nation. Right now, I would say, looking at the state of Indiana and looking at our county, probably 80% of the people are diabetic. 50% know it. The other haven't had a serum insulin. They're on the path to diabetes, and they don't know that. It would save the nation billions in medical costs. Our county, Allen City, which is going to be a musical mecca, I moved to the downtown so I could do the things I do here and to be a part of it instead of moving to another part of the world or to Florida. There's no question Fort Wayne is now and will be a huge musical mecca. Big, yeah. And it'll be huge. Chuck Sirach, we have to give him a lot of credit, the ballet company, where I take tap dance lessons. Yeah. Only one student in the class, but I just love it. But 90% of the people are unhealthy. We need to turn the dial and also create a healthy city, healthy state. I have an appointment on the 15th at the new Lutheran Hospital downtown. I hope for them to join in that. And Wesleyan University, I give them a lot of credit. are going to have a diabetes prevention center. They took all my books after I moved to downtown. And they're going to create a special library that will prevent, reverse diabetes and all the diseases. And every student that will graduate from that will have that information, and they know where to get it. And I'll be probably giving some talks there. I try to make an appointment with the head of the city schools to get them to join this fight, but so far they have not called back. That was 6 weeks ago, and so we'll see what happens. I may knock on the door again and see. It will not be easy to change the course of the system, but this great music center could lead the way. I challenge the mayor, I challenge the head of school system that we could lead the world in preventing diabetes. And now, remember what I said, you could be thin and still be diabetic. Get a serum insulin test. The trophies are thin on the outside, but they have fat in their liver or pancreas, yes, and they're diabetic. And they will have diseases. They may grab their chest and die from vascular disease, even if you're thin, yes. So the history of the school lunch reflects gender, racial, politics. Money is involved. Politicians are getting paid off. That doesn't mean I accept it. It is not that hard to become healthy. So the federal money plays a huge role. President Reagan, would you believe it? President Reagan reduced the federal contribution by a third. He cut $1 billion out. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then Trump cut out another 20%. That's in the book. I'm not picking politics here. It's in this book. Congress granted eventually the U.S. Department of Agriculture jurisdiction over the National School Lunch Program. So they refused to provide legal or financial support for nutrition education within the National School Lunch Program of 1946. Mm-hmm. Within 1 year, financial support for culinary and cafeteria equipment was axed out. Mm-hmm. So our government is involved. We're paying the taxes. We can start wars, we can stop wars, we can spend a lot of money on things, and it's complex. I, for example, have spoken to a number of veterans who've got diabetes, and they said to me, I don't want to get rid of my diabetes. I get paid $3,000 of disability payments. Man, you could almost see the point. But we have to figure out a different way. The veteran needs to get paid for getting well. Increase the amount of money he receives for getting well, not for staying sick. So it's not just a school lunch program. So the National School Lunch Program required state and municipal school food authorities contribute some money. The state has contributed $3 for every $1 the federal government pays. So they had to increase their taxes locally. Okay. Many poor communities didn't participate because they can't afford it. They didn't participate in the National School Program. They set up an economy that favored white society. Yes, because they more of them could afford the food, and a big food influence with politics promoted processed food, milk, and cut the wages of the cafeteria workers. Mm-hmm. politics at work. But again, I'm reviewing the history. So the fight for food justice was an act passed in the 60s and 70s. So it did produce some social change. But there were unintended consequences stemming from the private sector processed food companies, corn and milk subsidies. Corn and milk subsidies, yeah, to make them cheaper, but they were not healthy. They affected the food quality, and the job quality began to suffer. They cut expenses, they cut the hours of the lunch workers and breakfast workers. So in 1954, the Supreme Court ruling, Brown versus the Board of Education, so then there was white flight occurred to the outside of the city, and that also affected what we were feeding the schools, because the amount of reimbursement these schools were receiving, that the facilities built outside the city were better than facilities built inside the city. And but then came along President Johnson, who's I'm sure is in heaven now, and I want to applaud him because he did really go to work, and he passed the Older Americans Act in 1965, provided federal funding for home delivery meals, for example, to disabled older people. He helped the schools. Then the Nutrition Act of '66, free school lunch, and created the Great Society. President Johnson did that. And so there was more money available for school lunches, and education was promoted. And then President Nixon in December of '69 had a White House conference on food and nutrition. And the U.S. Department of Agriculture, remember, they're the ones controlling the National School Program. So they looked at it as a social safety net. They didn't look at it as good nutrition and availability to all people, So then the National School Lunch Program was privatized by the U.S. Department of Agriculture in March of 1970. Now it's a private entity. You wonder, is it going to get better, or is big food going to capture them? It was commercialized. Kitchens were really convenience stores. Things came into the schools frozen, pre-breaded, chicken patties, frozen hot dogs, dehydrated potato pearls. So to cut labor costs, that's what they did, forgetting that what the children are eating that determines their health is so important. That's where the money should be invested. Instead, they cut it. And so they called it an airline-type meal pack that they handed the children. It came in reheated in portable ovens and tucked inside a janitor's closet. Eliminate the need to boil things. Costly cafeterias were placed in poor communities. The frozen and conversion of food industry did help school feed more children, but it was feeding them unhealthy food, of course, making them sick, and killed many of them because they couldn't afford to buy their own food on the outside. So what did they feed to the children? Just like today in Fort Wayne, addictive food. They're feeding them addictive food. Other cities are improving. Remember, I mentioned that to you. And they were serving to many schools poor food. And it reduced labor force. They were not there to talk to the students. They were not there for the parents who came in to learn to cook properly. It was airline frozen lunches were served, TV dinners with a fancy name. Yes. And the staff was cut short. And as a New York Times restaurant critic said, it was a meal pack staff could gag a maggot. is what the New York Times said. And they found that non-protein foods were cheaper. So kids who were growing, who need 3 meals a day, and who need protein for growing, were changed because non-protein foods are cheaper. And so kids that are growing need protein. Factory-produced food became the gold standard. And you can, the cattle themselves were from factory farms. They were fed corn, and then you gave the little bit of meat they got to the children. So what are the children eating? The protein from an animal? No. They're eating corn because the animal ate corn. That's what factory farming is at, where they put them all in a long trough and they eat them, and then they kill them and they ship them off to you. And they use a lot of chemicals and fertilizers on them to make things so they eat more and eat faster, and that's the same for milk. They put hormones on there and pesticides, so they produce more milk. Incidentally, if you're a veterinarian, you want to feed the food of one species to another because it would kill them. We humans can tolerate, to a certain extent, milk products, but many have allergies. We don't have the enzyme that breaks down lactose, the sugar. And I'm an example that actually happens as we get a day older. We develop lactose intolerance. We get bellyaches, okay? Michael Pollan has published a lot of things about food, and Michael Pollan said, we have the cornification of the American food system. Yes. The government supports the price of corn to make it cheaper, and we're eating it when there's in it fructose, which goes to the liver and is very harmful to your health. And so now some places have now union-formed cafeteria workers. They're allowed to form a union, which was the victory for the workers, but they lost the war because they cut their hours. They let them unionize, but they are not working as long hours. And so in the 1970s, the quality of food went down, and the people that served it were tired workers, and the wages started going down. They're working less hours, which affected the school lunch. The consequences for children's health. So only the starving children, because they got some food, whether it's good or not is another story. So the National School Lunch Program turned into a radicalized social welfare program. Mm-hmm. We should have free lunches and breakfasts for all the students, and it should be good food, okay? So what are alternative visions for the school lunch program? So for a good decade, they've been looking for alternatives, but it's been captured by the industrial food system. The USDA has been compromised because they're privatized now, and they have to make a profit. Some books have been written, which are interesting. Rachel Carson, The Silent Spring, How Chemicals Ruin the Environment. That's a book worth reading. Frances LaPay, A Diet for a Small Planet, a good book to read. She taught people to pay attention to the food they ate. Pay attention to what you are eating. Look it up. Read these books. Look at the recipes. Look at YouTube. And Otherwise, you've been captured by big food. The fast food restaurants are serving unhealthy food for you to consume. And they will create sugar addicts also. The National School Lunch Program was and is serving in many places highly processed food products. But like I said, some cities are changing and we applaud them. So industrial factories, remember I told you where the animals all eat out of a trough. I think one is over 30 miles long in Kansas, where all the animals are eating out of this chemically produced food. They add thousands of chemicals to the school food, and then your kid is eating it. And some are forced to eat it because they can't afford anything else. And so the National School Program is a cheap food economy. And I already mentioned that Ronald Reagan cut the budget and Trump cut the budget. Then they started the real food movement, which really was formed by big food and a new profit play. And new standards were created around 2000 or so. Big Food lobbied Congress to change the 2010 Healthy, Hunger-Free Kind Act to better align to its own profit motive. Congress passed a law, but Big Food managed to have it changed. Yes, yes. The healthy part of teaching, the HAPKI, were representing the students more, and they updated the school nutrition standards. Michelle Obama was a champion of healthy diet for children, and I even visited Washington, D.C. while they were in office, but I must say, looking at the local population, where I went for a medical conference, they look very unhealthy. But she was a champion of healthy diet for children. She tried, but eventually, actually, she didn't get much done. Very little changed. And I think maybe the leadership wasn't strong enough by many people. The head of the school system, maybe even the president. But she tried. And so in Congress, in 1981, stopped funding for new equipment for school, but Minneapolis and Minnesota stepped up to bat and is the leader of the real food movement. They organized a new economy of care. Big Food scored a major win, though, in 2018 by rolling back the nutritional upgrades recommended by Healthy, Hunger-Free Kids Act of 2010. Politics at work, where the kids become sick and die young and become disabled, means very little to the politicians. They just react to the amount of money you're willing to give them. That's occurring today. And so the school lunches were not seen as part of the educational system. I think they should be considered the rock, the middle of the educational system. They're not something peripheral. And Congress, listen to this one, Congress declared the pizza was the vegetables. They changed recommendations. Potatoes were counted as a vegetable. So little change, though, can have big results. Convince your local food service director of the school system to take up the local school channels and get people in your community to help. This is what I'm doing. Join me. Attend the meetings of the school boards and show them this. You're creating sugar addicts. Stop it, stop it, stop it. So attending these meetings and any organizations you can form, any groups you can form. You can also go to a website that will help you. I'll read it to you. hbo.com/theweight-of-the-nation to find out more. You get more information, okay? hbo.com/theweight-of-the-nation. And when I update the latest looking on the internet, Google, for example, that I look at a great website in New York City. They update it, and you can learn a great deal from it. The land that doesn't need Ozempic. Here's the last part I'd like to discuss with you a little bit. Japan runs an obesity rate of 3.8%, 3.6%, in UK 26%, US 42.5%, and Japan's is still shrinking 0.8% a year. How did this happen? Well, they teach children and the parents in the schools. Isn't that interesting? And they learn this from the beginning. And you can read about it in this book. It's a more diverse diet. They insist on. They don't seem to recommend milk, and they have 5 tastes, 5 ingredients, 5 tastes, 5 skills, 5 colors. If you are an American and you go there, even on the plane, you'll see the difference in what the Japanese are eating and what we are eating. Actually, what seems like a small amount has many ingredients in it, which seems to have 60 to 65 ingredients, and the Japanese food and much healthier. Every Japanese school has to hire a professional nutritionist. Every school has a professional nutritionist, and they educate the student and the parents as to what good food is. And then they saw in their school system that because of traveling and international delivery, they saw the obesity rate increase a little bit. They formed another law, 2008, called the Metabolic Law. Once the Metabolic Law, they called it the Metabolic Law, and you know what they're doing? You wouldn't believe this. They have the school system, okay? But now they speak to the employers. And I think it's something that we should consider, that we go into individual factories, and what they do, they have a law now that once a year, every employee must have a BMI, body mass index check, to have some blood work done. They weigh them, they measure their waistline, they take a picture, and they put it online. And then what to do about it, some of that even brings out a little bit of a laugh, but I don't think it would be accepted here, but sure is accepted there. And now they're a very healthy nation. They have the 3rd largest economy in the world. Mm-hmm. And what they do is they take a robot, and the robot takes a picture of you and then speaks to you, and you must tell them what you've been eating for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, how much exercise you're getting. They keep track of it. And if you have a problem, they see you back once a month till it is corrected to the best of your ability. And and you've had multiple blood tests, they have pictures of you, and you won't believe this, they even allow your fellow employee that you're working with to have access to your pictures in the hopes of that person maybe helping you a little bit. And socialization and friendships do help one to become healthy. So maybe we could summarize things here a little bit. I encourage you to obtain other information and to read other books. I think this one, the history of this, the labor of lunch, I think is very interesting. And to see what a mayor, and give him a lot of credit, is trying to do. I don't agree for everything in this book, but the book is excellent. You need to learn a little more that just eating plants is not the answer, because like vitamin B12, some of the minerals are not as good in plants versus meats. Eating a pure plant diet, a vegan diet, is actually, people don't realize it, is a high sugar diet. That's the reason on our food pyramids, vegetables and fruits are at the top, because they're full of fructose and sugars. Yeah, so read a book called Plant-Based Con. Plant-Based Con. That looks at the whole story and to read it. So you need to, gather information. So just eating a plant-based diet is not necessarily the answer. Remember, if you want to talk to me about it, that's fine. Remember, I got 2,000 books on my basement. The Plant-Based Con, I've read it a couple of times. Now, if you're very unhealthy and way overweight, and you've got a child, for example, that's way overweight, to use some of these GLP inhibitors, which you hear a lot, like Ozempic and things you hear a lot about these days. They're developing rapidly. Very soon they'll be cheap. It won't just be injection once a week. That for some people, that may be necessary. They're speaking about getting them to children now. But I personally think you should try to prevent or reverse the diabetes before trying that. Johann Hari wrote this excellent book. Encourage you to have a look at it. Johann Hari. And I've done previous YouTube shows. They're on YouTube. Rudy Kachmann YouTube, and you can go interviewing one person who's been in one of these injections. Then I have another one I'll show talking about the pros and cons of it, just trying to educate you. I'm not saying take them or don't take them or stop them. But now they're talking, they've approved them, I think, to age 12 or so, but they have other side effects. They make increased rates of pancreatitis, increased rates of thyroid cancer, a number of side effects. But it's not, if you have a lot of these complications of being overweight, getting those diseases, that may be even higher risk. So you have to weigh the risks from one side or the other. So I'm not saying stop them or start them. What I'm saying is you need to get informed. But some kids are starting to take them now, and industry, of course, is influencing that. And they will, I think it's down to age 12 now, soon it'll be age 8. But remember, they are not without risk. So to eat correctly and learn what good and bad food is, which would be about 60 to 70% good fats, maybe 20% protein. Yes, protein is important. It helps turn the appetite off. You need the vitamin B12. But if you take more protein than your body needs, your protein decides how much it needs. Yeah, so weightlifters, think more protein, they build bigger muscles. It doesn't work that way. Your body decides, and 80% of the muscles broken down from walking or from playing pickleball or tap dancing are recycled and used again. Only 20% are essential. In other words, you got to eat them every day. So a huge 90% high protein diet, the extra protein that's beyond what your body needs gets converted to sugar. Yes, I have a friend of mine who did that. He get bigger and bigger. He was stronger for a while, and I realize now that maybe he was a sugar addict. It could be, and it did not end well. So nutrition and what we eat is the most important thing in your life. What you're consuming, what you're drinking, sugary drinks is the biggest cause of having metabolic diseases like diabetes. Yeah, it still is today. Water is what you need to drink. I myself didn't drink enough water because in my stomach during the tennis match, which I played a lot years ago, the water would just go up and down. I could hear it splashing. So I never, and then playing pickleball a few times and not drinking water resulted in me having stamina problems. So water consumption is very important. You got to learn to drink water every day. I drink maybe 4 or 5 glasses of 8-ounce water. Coffee counts a little bit too, but you may have your own level. But water consumption is critical with every meal. Maybe if you drink it even before you eat, your stomach will be full and you won't eat as much. I recommend eating 2 meals a day. It's not a religious or philosophical reason. I myself find this an easy way. Your body forms a set point after a while. When you eat the same for a long period of time, I'm 134 every day inside out. And I think because I have a set point, eat 2 meals a day. And if you make the first meal, you can have the times differently. If you're working a night shift, for example, 16/8 to me is really the easiest way. Your body secretes about 5 hormones in the morning: growth hormones, steroids, gut hormones, intestinal hormones. Ghrelin, the appetite stimulant, goes down in the morning because the sun is arising. So it's natural. Breakfast is a new invention. Yeah, breakfast, okay? It's a new invention. You don't need breakfast. People think most important part of the meal. Baloney. That's a big lie put out by industry and uninformed nutritionists. And I, for example, don't eat breakfast. I go play pickleball, or I might take a walk through the woods or whatever. I'm not hungry at all because these 5 hormones I mentioned are secreted in your body, and I don't. And then I play, say, pickleball for an hour and a half, and that results secretion of steroids, and that raises the blood sugar. So I'm not even hungry when I get home to eat lunch, but I got to eat something, okay? And then if you eat good protein, like a couple of eggs, for example, some guacamole, a good fat, I'm satisfied quickly. And the last meal, it almost doesn't matter what you eat. Snacking is a poor idea, to eat and then go to bed, or a lot of alcohol consumption. Alcohol is metabolized first, and then you fall asleep. And then you wake up again after it is metabolized. So that's not a good way. But to drink a glass of wine once or twice a week, you probably get away with that. But to consume a lot of alcohol or other addictive habits, smoking, drugs, a very poor idea, gambling. And they did find that these new drugs, these GLP-1 inhibitors, like Ozempic, Wegovy, and many others, there are going to be many others discovered very quickly. They're being tested right now. They also stop sugar addiction, alcohol addiction, gambling addiction, narcotic addiction. So if you have all those, it may be worthwhile. Dr. Hari would say if your BMI is 27 or under, don't take these GLP-1 inhibitors, because they can result in people with bad food habits, and over 35, if you're way overweight, your BMI is over 35, you should consider taking them, because the effects from the diseases you got are bigger than possible side effects from the GLP-1 inhibitors. But check with your provider, but we don't all have a good provider. Sometimes we need to change them, or get informed out of the internet, or read some of these books. You need to participate in your health. We're all individuals. We're all different. And to have one of those glucose monitors that people use today on their arms, the Lifestyle Libre, for example, Dexcom X, good idea, because as you change your diets, taking less pills, your blood sugars may go up and down, and it could be dangerous. So to have one of these monitors on you if you're on medications and many diseases, that's a good idea. So thank you for listening. I'm trying to see you live to be 100 and can play pickleball with me, because I plan to, 88 now, 134 pounds, feel great, tap dance, sing music. I'm trying to change this town into a healthy town. We have a music town, but a very unhealthy town, and I'd like to help change it to a healthy town. It could be done, but the schools must participate. They can't be feeding out kids what you can print off the internet, cinnamon buns for breakfast, and they expect the children to be healthy. But it can be done. I don't give up. I don't look back. I look forward. Join me. Talk to me anytime. Why did I do this today? I love you. I'm a doctor. That's my job. And I do it for free. Bye-bye.